Drill Cowles was a man of routine, and Friday the 5th of July was no exception. His evening began here at the Black Swan in Walsall. He then strolled a few hundred yards to Fibber McGee's and had a few more pints. Later he was seen taking a taxi. Destination Brown Hills. This too was routine. Near the Wheatsheaf pub he'd often call his girlfriend from a phone box on the corner. But that night he never made a call. He was last seen being followed by 3 men at around 11:30.
At this ornamental pond near the club, Rachel caught up with Barry and they argued. According to Barry, Rachel had wanted to go back to the club for a taxi, but he'd wanted to avoid more trouble, so they parted. It was the last time he would see his girlfriend. Barry had told Rachel he was going to visit his friend Keith, who lived nearby, in the hope of cadging a lift home. We have pieced together evidence and reconstructed subsequent events.
Hi, mate.
All right, Barry. Oh, it's cold out there.
Bloody freezing. You all right?
Yeah, not so bad. Oh, nice trousers.
Yeah. Oh, that's better.
Oh, it's not some room in here. Yeah, I'm going to make some tea. Do you want some?
Yeah, lovely.
Lovely. Oh, hold on. Hello? Yeah, he's here. It's Rach.
You all right? Yeah, I'm all right.
Rachel was calling from this phone box after getting lost in the maze of housing estates between the club and Keith's house.
If you can get...
Don't be stupid, I don't... No, look, get to the Blockbuster and me and Keith will come and pick you up in a van.
Before Peter begins his investigation, I meet Ryan Johnson to hear his account of what happened on the night of the murders. It was a Saturday night at the end of a long week for the Johnsons, in which they'd officially opened their gift shop and finally moved out of rented accommodation and into the house they'd had built. Terry, Joe and Ryan decided to have a takeaway at home. Ryan's best friend on the island, Andy Bart, joined.
Andy and I arranged to meet other people at 9. I said, we're late. It was already like 5 to 9. Mum said, oh, you know, it's Greece. Don't worry. You know, everything can be done later. They'll wait. And we sat down and she gave Andy the photo album. And literally she went through the photo album with him. They were opposite each other. And Dad and I just chipped in, you know. And we had, really, at that point, we had a really good laugh.
At around 9:15, he and Andy drove off to meet friends in a cafe in a neighbouring village to play pool. They played pool all evening, and Ryan left at around 12:25 a.m. to run Andy and another friend home. He says it was just before 1 a.m. when he got back to the house. When you got back at 1 o'clock, did you notice anything unusual about the house?
No, nothing at all. Apart from it was dark, but that was normal. You know, the fires were off, the TV was off, and the inside lights were off. The outside porch was still on. So yeah, it just looked like, it would just look normal, and let myself in, locked the door and went upstairs to bed. Yeah.
Next day, Ryan got up at noon and began tidying up downstairs. He says it was common for his parents to have long lie-ins on a Sunday. Nevertheless, he began to feel uneasy.
Suddenly it felt everything was wrong. My gut feeling was that, yeah, something is wrong.
Down the line from here, 16 people died in one of the worst train disasters of the 20th century, and we still don't know who two of them were. Two young children who were never claimed by their families. It seems they were travelling from Yorkshire towards Bristol, apparently unaccompanied. So who were they? Birmingham in the early hours of the morning on Saturday the 13th of August 1928. The station's head porter loads a case onto the train before it starts the last leg of its journey down to Bristol. Later he'll remember two fresh-faced children in school uniform. While the passengers slept, the night mail train headed south. Running 7 minutes late, the driver and the engineers were keen to make up time on the long haul through Gloucestershire. The night mail was the fastest train on the line. It took priority. Slower trains had to be shunted out of the way. That was a complicated process involving a series of signal boxes along the route. As dawn began to break, the 100-ton locomotive drawing 11 carriages was heading through Gloucestershire. But here at Charfield Station, there was a problem. A goods train had stopped on the main track to draw water. It should have been shunted away down those sidings behind me, leaving the track free for the mail train to thunder through at around 80 miles an hour. But it was still there, blocking the track. The Charfield signalman quickly set his signal to danger, but the train didn't halt. Desperately he tried to warn the station master, but he was seconds too late. The locomotive ploughed head-on into the stationary goods train. For 15 years after the crash, a woman in black would visit the grave. Each year on the anniversary of the disaster, she'd arrive in a chauffeur-driven Rolls-Royce. Local workers watched as she made her way to the grave.
About 50 years ago, I used to do a milk round with a pony and cart. And every time I go by, this woman was chauffeur-driven, all in black. She go down the grave, but never speak to nobody. Right? But nobody approached her and asked who she was.
It seems strange that nobody asked her, but apparently she, perhaps even if you asked her, she probably wouldn't have said. It was something that was obviously very private.
So who was the mysterious woman? There's acres of newsprint from the time, but nothing which suggests who she or the two children might have been.
In 1976, the government introduced the Dangerous Wild Animals Act, bowing to pressure after a child had been bitten by a leopard in a town centre. It now became an offence to own certain animals without an expensive licence and approved caging. Animal owners had to make a choice. They could conform to the new regulations or donate their animals to zoos if any would take them. Failing this, they could have their animals put down. It's accepted that many people chose to release their animals into the wild.
On Saturday the 8th of August last year, an MI5 officer pretending to be a Russian rang a flat in Kingston upon Thames.
I am George speaking. I am a colleague of your old friend Victor. Do you remember him?
Yes, yes.
Okay, that's good. Now listen. It is very urgent for me to talk to you. Do you understand?
Yes.
I think we do this another way. Do you understand? I think there is a telephone on the corner of Durlston Avenue and Cardinal Road.
Yes, yes.
You can be there in 15 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
It's very important. I will ring you there.
Shortly afterwards, Michael Smith, an electronic engineer working for GEC, left home after telling his wife he was going out for a newspaper. An espionage drama which many people might suppose had ceased with the collapse of the Soviet Union had come to suburbia. Smith took MI5's bait and went to the phone box. After waiting some time for a further call which didn't come, he began walking away. It was then that Special Branch officers moved in and arrested him. On the 20th of July last year, Viktor Oschenko, a scientific counselor at the Russian embassy, set out across Paris. A colonel in Russian intelligence, it seems that Oschenko had been working secretly for MI6 for several years. It's not clear why he chose this particular moment to defect, but he headed for the Faubourg Saint-Honoré and the British embassy.
Never before has the population of a major city faced round-the-clock bombing. London's emergency services are overwhelmed. Firemen are called in from all over the country. Ted Wilson, a 16-year-old volunteer from Coventry, must ask for permission to travel south.
I went and asked Mother, and she says, "Oh, go on." And while I was getting into my uniform, my mother, she made a great big pile of I'll never forget, great big pile of sandwiches for us to eat on the way. And there was only lard, pure lard sandwiches with a little sprinkle of salt on. And away I went. And I said to somebody, "Where are we going to?" And they did say, "We're going down to Silvertown on the docks in London."
In fighting the fire, 16 firemen were killed, 11 by high explosive bombs and 5 by falling walls.
It was horrific. You've got the bombs dropping down, sometimes in the fires that you're actually trying to put out. And the sky didn't exist. That was a blackness.
Wednesday the 30th of October. Pitters took over for me today and I went to meet Edith as soon as possible. My God, it seems to be the real thing this time.
When we were together, it was quite out of this world, quite literally. He was a delight. He was funny. He was terribly romantic. We used to laugh a lot and act the go generally. It was something you don't see often. And perhaps war intensified it a bit. And every moment you're together is precious, you see. Women were new in the forces and they were worried that things would get out of hand and we'd get pregnant and there'd be all sorts of mayhem. And they might have even thought it was bad for the boys because they did say that they didn't like their pilots to get engaged in things because it destroyed their spontaneousness. They started to worry too much. And I think they were probably right, because he started being careful.
By the summer of 1944, the German army had encircled northern France with a chain of strongholds. Concrete fortresses, minefields, gun emplacements. For the Allied invasion of Europe to succeed, all of these killing grounds had to be made known to the planners back in Britain. They had to be marked on a map.
Avant la guerre, depuis 1938, j'étais marchand de cycles à Bayeux. Et entre 1935 et 1939, j'étais coureur professionnel. Et dans cette période, j'ai gagné 107 victoires. Mon ancienne profession de coureur cycliste m'a été très utile car j'avais eu l'idée pendant l'occupation, je n'ai pas eu la possibilité de courir car j'avais trop d'occupations avec le réseau et mon affaire commerciale, mais j'avais continué à retirer ma licence de coureur professionnel et sur la côte, ceci m'a été très très utile, car lorsque nous circulions sur la côte, il y avait de nombreux contrôles de gendarmerie, et lorsque nous étions arrêtés et éloignés de son propre domicile, il fallait en donner les raisons. Alors pour moi, c'était très facile, car au lieu de sortir mon os-ouest, je sortais ma licence de coureur professionnel et je leur invoquais que j'étais à l'entraînement.
The precious maps were spirited away across the Channel to find sanctuary in secret map libraries.
The moment the war started, I wanted to join the Wrens, and I joined up at 19. We had to scrub floors and then polish them. I mean, it was hard work. I think they were just really to see if you could take any sort of toughness and discipline. They decided that sort of on my school certificate results, geography was, all right, that I wasn't really suitable for a cook and a steward, and they were starting up this new category in Oxford. And so I went to Oxford. Ren 41408.
This was the Inter-Services Topographical Department, staffed by service personnel and Oxbridge Dons. They mined every possible source of information for the invasion maps. A rich seam was opened when they got the BBC to ask the public to send in snaps and postcards of continental holidays. 30,000 arrived by the next post, and there were 10 million altogether. They contained vital details of gradient, sea walls, distinctive buildings, and so on.
I started work in the Bodleian Library, which was where they were sorting all the photographs. I suppose it was one of these enormous rooms. There were tables, masses of tables, and people all working in little groups. You didn't want just a sort of pretty picture. You wanted something that was definitely a landscape of some sort or a townscape. I then moved over to Manchester College, to the map curators department. They had the Admiralty chart, and from that they filled in the details of the type of beach and the landmarks, anything, of course, that you could see from the sea.
Spitfires zooming in just above the waves took thousands of photographs which were stuck together to form coastal panoramas. They were then made into books which the troops studied to read themselves into battle.
It was not long after this event that an unusual and carefully guarded operation by American forces aroused the suspicions of a young farmer.
One morning we left Townstow to go to Totnes, and we was going along the road there towards Blackall Forces there, and in a field there on the right we saw bulldozers there. They'd have dug out great pits. On top of the earth mounds around the pits, they had boxes lined up. There could have been 50, 60 boxes there. We didn't see any bodies at that time, but there was lorries, six-wheeler lorries backed in close to the pits with canvas hoods, but what they had in the lorries, I do not know. They saw us looking at them, but they had, around the perimeter of the field, they had guards that are set up every 10 paces, armed with carbines. They just waved us on, quick as they could. But there was something definitely going on that day in that field.
The sniper will be 100 to 200 yards from the path, well within striking distance of Hitler. Operation Foxley never happened. No assassins were ever sent to the Berghof.
Groups of captured British soldiers were herded across the Flanders fields to a small barn. As well as Warwickshires, there were men of the Cheshire Regiment and the Royal Artillery. There was a growing sense of unease, but no one in the barn was prepared for what was about to happen. In all, 5 grenades were thrown into the barn. Those who had survived were lined up outside in groups of 5 to be shot in the back. Some turned to face their murderers. But men were still alive back in the barn. The final bullet was for a soldier who was shot in the mouth. Remarkably, he survived.
In the southeast of Warwickshire is the long ridge of Edge Hill, site of the first battle of the English Civil War. 1,500 men were slaughtered here in 1642, and it's produced one of the best documented ghost stories of all time.
On Christmas Eve that year, farm labourers and workers returning home looked up to see the very same battle being reenacted in the sky.
They saw the advance of the King's men down the hill towards the ranks of the parliamentarians, banners flying, drums beating, trumpets blaring, the whole scene being outlined against a bright light in the sky. They saw flame belching from cannons and muskets, the clash of pikes and the charge of cavalry. The watchers heard the pounding of hooves, the shouting of orders, and the cries of wounded men and animals. The phantom battle was to last for 3 hours, until the royalist forces appeared to retreat and the apparitions vanished from sight. The ghostly conflict was repeated on Saturday and Sunday nights for some weeks afterwards, and seen by so many witnesses that King Charles sent 6 officers from Oxford to investigate the matter. They not only saw the reenactment in its entirety, but also recognised some of their friends who'd been killed in the battle.
Six of us, all personal friends, sat in a semicircle. My wife being on my left. Presently, a voice came quite close to my face.
Both my wife and I cried out that it was our boy. He began to talk. He tried to console me for his death. I asked, "Are you happy?" He answered, "I am happy now." He put his strong, heavy hand on my head and pressed as solidly as possible. And I can assure you that he left me a good deal happier than he found me.
Arthur Conan Doyle never escaped the shadow of loss. He spent the rest of his life searching for an explanation, for a way of justifying his grief.
Help your brothers. I told her, how can I help my brothers? There is nothing, there is no problem. You are a liar. Where is the plan? I told her, no, I don't know. Fuck off, son of bitch. She told me, you know very well what happened. Tell me the truth. Where is the plan? Names. Help yourself. I'm civilian people, please. There is no mercy, not with you, because you are a terrorist. Every day, in the night. Where is Eunice? I told her yes. She told me come. I told her yes. What? She do that. On my face. I told her, why you do that with me? Why? I'm not murderer, not terrorist. Shut up, keep quiet. Always, shut up, shut up, shut up.
Those destined for the gas chamber were the elderly, the sick, mothers and children. Using computer graphics, we can now retrace their walk to death.
When people were selected to die in crematorium number 2, they would leave the place where the selection took place, and they would walk up to the compound around crematorium 2, and they would be brought to this point right here. Here is an underground space which originally was designed as a morgue, but during the construction of this building was redesignated as an undressing room. They would be forced to undress. There were benches, there were hooks with numbers attached to it, and they would be told to remember exactly where they hang their clothes, because they would have to retrieve their clothes after the showers, of course. Then at the end of this room, they would enter into a vestibule, and now they were naked. And from this vestibule into a second room, which is the underground gas chamber. There they would see against the ceiling showers, but of course these showers were fake, no water would ever come out of it. They would be locked into this room, and then the SS would begin the gassing operation.